Hey everyone, welcome to the Return of the Logos podcast, where we're attempting to return logic to a chaotic world by shining a light on the shadows. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Return of the Logos podcast. We'd like to thank you all so much for all your support, for all your following, subscribing, and hopefully all of your sharing. We're hoping that you're sharing this. That's how we're going to grow, and that's how we're going to keep doing this. So help us out as much as you can. And also, just a reminder, we are now available on YouTube, boo, Rumble, yay, True Social, and X. YouTube, Rumble, you can find us at Return of the Logos or / Return of the Logos. On True Social, find us at Return of the Logos. On X, it is at Returning Logos. In the search field, just type Return of the Logos. It'll take you to us. So everybody, please follow us on social media. If you want some political hot takes, I'm having fun on there.
A little bit of political humor.
There's a lot of memes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm by no means a meme lord, but when I do see a good meme, I do repost it.
Yep.
And also, hey, if you guys like to listen to podcasts on YouTube or Rumble, you can do it there now. Once we get to the point where we're doing video, it will be there. So we're already set up and ready to go for you guys.
But we got to keep sharing. We got to keep growing in order for us to be able to do that.
Yes, for sure.
We want to keep doing this, and we want to keep growing it, and we want to keep giving you better and better content and higher production value as we go. And the only way we can do that is with your support. So we appreciate it.
Well said. Now, we thought it's a good idea to maybe put a little bit of a bow on the last episode, since it was pretty spicy.
Oh, yeah. Pepper.
Little, maybe at times vulgar.
It's a spicy pepper.
This is by no means to be misconstrued as an apology. We are not apologetic at all for anything that we said or even our attitudes during the last show. But what we do want to say, and say it in a calm manner, to any of the liberals out there who are listening, understand that the way Andy and I feel and the way that we're expressing ourselves, if you're not happy with that, and if you're not happy with everything that's happening in the current administration with Donald Trump and his cabinet and with Doge and with all of that, if you're not happy with the culture that's pushing back on the things that you hold dear to your heart, understand that what's happening now is reactionary. Over the last 10 to 15 years, we've been having progressively more and more radical ideas and ideologies just rammed down our throats to the point where I can't even watch a movie on Netflix without gay people or trans people in it.
Is there a problem, people?
We were just discussing ideas of what to do with the new Prince Eric movie.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Maybe we should go a different route than we did with Indiana Jones.
Fuck Indiana Jones, put a chick in it and make her name it gay!
Sure, yeah. Well, let's try that. Again.
I have to screen movies on Disney.
On Disney?
For my daughter to watch. I have to screen them. I have to watch them first.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy is down on set right now ruining the new Bambi movie.
Any diverse woman in it, make it gay!
Bambi's a baby deer.
Fuck baby dear, put a chick in it, make her gay! And I want it lame! Where the fuck is Bob Iger?
Mr. Iger just had to take some of the others to a screening.
I think that things are being kept from me. And if you're going to keep things from me, then you'd better put a chick in it and make it fucking gay as fuck.
And so understand that this is reactionary. And so if you don't like the reaction that's happening right now, maybe a little bit of moderation on your part is called for. You can't take radical and fringe ideas and people and policies and try to make them the center of regular people's everyday life. You can't do that without a reaction. Most people in this country are fairly middle of the road, and you need to understand that.
Yeah. So the pendulum swings, and eventually it'll swing back. If you don't like what's happening, understand that it's reactionary and maybe next time you guys are in power, maybe don't be so divisive. Maybe don't push so hard against families and fathers and mothers and the majority of the population for the sake of some sort of a fringe ideology, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe when you get gay marriage, maybe you say, cool, when? Instead of saying, what's next? And then start teaching my little girl that she's a boy and teaching little boys that they're girls. Just a thought. Just a thought.
Yeah, we understand that if you consider yourself progressive, the term progressive implies that you're continually pushing boundaries. But understand that not every boundary should be pushed. You can get to a point where the majority of the people are happy where the boundary is.
Yeah, to say it in the tone of our last program, next time you guys get power, don't be such assholes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, don't be so divisive. Yeah, so just understand that it's reactionary. And I don't have anything against people that, look, it's fine if you think differently than I do. We all have different opinions and different views and different families and different lives and what we've learned from and what we've taken from that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not, you can think, you can have whatever political views you want.
It's when you try to force my language. It's when a boy says she's a girl or...
See, we can't even get the pronouns right anymore.
Exactly. See, this is the problem. When a boy says he's a girl, that's not true. He's a boy. And whoever wants to play along is fine. So free speech is one thing, but when you try to enforce, you have to compel someone in order for someone else's world to be confirmed. And it's a lie.
Dangerous.
You can't expect that.
Right.
If you guys want to play pretend, you're adults. Play pretend. But don't tell me that I have to play pretend.
Right. And
don't tell me what language I'm allowed to use. And don't tell me that I have to lie in order for someone else's world to not crumble.
Yeah, and when it comes to your views and what you believe and what you think, and even what you say, I'm a libertarian. But that's as far as my libertarianism goes. I'm not a libertarian at all when it comes to your outward actions, particularly when those outward actions have a negative impact on society, on culture, or have even physical effects on people. That's why I'm not a libertarian. Well, for other reasons too, that maybe we can get into on another show.
I definitely lean libertarian. Do what you want, but don't try to compel my speech in order to justify your delusion. What's more, do not bring my daughter into this. When you guys start doing that stuff, you're crossing lines, and this is what you're going to get. This is all reactionary. Stop fucking with our kids. Don't fuck with our kids.
Isn't there a song, Just Leave the Kids Alone?
Gay teachers, leave them kids alone.
Anyway, all right. Now that we've got a bow on that, and since the last episode was, like I said, it was pretty spicy, a lot of wordy dirds in there, and pretty heavy. We're going to do...
It was passionate. It was just very passionate.
It was passionate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, passionate. We're going to do maybe a little bit of a palate cleanse tonight. We're going to play with the format here a little bit. So as we progress as a show, still trying to find our footing, find our niche, and
keep things fresh. Welcome to Not So Current Affairs. Brought to you by Return of the Logos. And now your host, Isaiah.
How much time?
You're on.
I love scotch. I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch. Here it goes down into my belly. That is good.
You're on the air.
How are you? How much time till we're on?
You're on, Ron.
What?
We're on the air right now.
Oh. I'm ready. Good evening, I'm Ron Burgundy. Here's what's going on in your world tonight.
I'm not going to play Anchorman because I can't do it.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I'll just come off as a cheap Will Ferrell imitation.
People know me.
We want to hit a couple things that I wanted to talk about that are happening right now. At the time of recording are current, but probably at the time of release aren't going to be quite so current. And Andy, I wanted to kind of get your take on some of this stuff.
Oh, wait. Sorry. And your co-host, Andy Taylor.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
How's that for production value?
That's awesome production value.
I thought so.
We're doing this without no producers. We don't have a booth. We don't have a teleprompter. We don't have the bird.
Sound man. We got nobody doing show prep.
We're just winging it, folks. So something that's been going on over the last couple of days, if some of you aren't aware, and you're probably not, because this is mainly a political story, but over the last several days, several prominent conservative voices, some comedians, some commentators, some just online personalities have been swatted. For those of you who don't know what a swatting is when someone falsely calls the police and informs the police that there is some type of active emergency, like a hostage situation or a body or something like that. They call that into the police, which then dispatches a SWAT team. And of course, the police are assuming that it's a legitimate call. They come out with full force, bang, 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 police, police. Sometimes they kick in the door. And I think they're actually trying to get people killed. Because if you've got these SWAT guys or just regular police officers all hopped up on adrenaline thinking that they're going into, an active hostage situation, things can happen.
It's very dangerous.
It's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, it's extremely dangerous because if you're anything like me, you defend your home. You defend your home and your family. And if someone busts on your door and you have no idea why, and it doesn't make any sense to you because it's not there's no legitimate threat on the premises.
Right. And that's kind of the point, is the person that's in there is going to react.
Yeah. They're not going to know. It's not going to compute. Their first thought is not going to be that they're getting SWAT.
So we have an article here. This is Newsweek. MAGA influencers targeted by swatting calls. Multiple conservative and MAGA figures have said they have been victims of so-called swatting incidents at their homes. Social media influencer Gunther Eagleman, radio show host Joe Pagliarulo, and InfoWars Chase Geiser are among those who have said they were targeted in recent days. FBI Director Kash Patel, who was nominated to the role by President Donald Trump, said the agency is investigating the alleged incidents and warned against the dangerous trend in a Friday morning post on X, formerly Twitter. So I can also confirm, just through some people that I follow on X, Benny Johnson has been posting about this. He himself wasn't swatted, but he had brought it to light. And I don't know, are you familiar with the guy Brick Suit?
I'm not.
He's more of like a character.
Okay.
He got famous because he wore a suit that's actually looks like a brick wall. So he goes by Brick Suit.
Okay.
So he's just kind of like a conservative, like online conservative. He confirmed in one of Benny Johnson's X threads that he was swatted. And there have been a few more as well. I had it pulled up here on X, but I seem to have lost the thread somehow. But along with these swattings that are happening, and again, it's all been conservative people. There have been several Tesla dealerships and even some Tesla factories that have been either damaged or set on fire, just attacked in general. So just a quick Google search of Tesla dealerships set on fire. So I have all kinds of articles here over the last few days. ABC News, Tesla vehicles vandalized across U.S. NBC News, Tesla facilities face wave of attacks. CBS News, Tesla facilities attacked in wake of Elon Musk's role with Doge. New York Times, rage against Elon Musk turns Tesla into a target. Right, so this is ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times reporting this. This is not This isn't some
This is not a fringe story.
This isn't a fringe story. This is happening. The reason why I'm tying the two together is because this clearly seems to be an attack on conservatives and on people in the MAGA movement. So I think that we might see a pretty crazy summer. Antifa and rioters don't go out when it's cold because it's too cold.
And I know you said we're going to let that last episode go, but that's why I played the Dark Brandon speech, because it is still relevant. There are still people that believe that the straw man that he created, the caricature, is real. And I was under the impression that they were not in support of violence.
Exactly. And I mean, this is the party that was traditionally, anti-war and, give peace a chance and all that. But this goes to the Democrat Party has been taken over by hardcore extreme leftists.
Pretty radical
leftists.
Yeah.
And they're willing to destroy people's property and possibly have people killed. So here on NBC News, as Elon Musk attempts to drastically cut the federal workforce and delves further into the corridors of American power, the tech mogul's electric car maker Tesla has come under fire, literally. There have been at least a dozen. That's not proofread very well. Come on, where's the editor? I'm going to read this as is so you can see how stupid the mainstream media is. There have been at least a dozen of vandalism against Tesla vehicles.
I hate it when they do a vandalism.
I know. I hate when they do a vandalism. Tesla vehicles, dealerships, or charging stations in recent weeks, according to police and local reports, underscoring the backlash Musk has faced since taking on an unprecedented role in the federal government. On January 29th, the 40-year-old woman threw a Molotov cocktail at a Cybertruck parked at a dealership in Loveland, Colorado, according to police. About 2,000 miles east, more than half a dozen Tesla charging stations were intentionally set on fire near Boston, police said last week. At a Tesla dealership in nearby Dedham, Massachusetts, police said Tuesday that a man spray-painted 3 vehicles, marking the second time the dealership was tagged within the last 2 weeks. On the West Coast in Tigard, Oregon, police said last week at least 7 shots were fired at a Tesla dealership there that morning, damaging 3 cars and shattering windows. And on Friday, a man ignited beer bottles and hurled the bottles at a Tesla charging stations in North... Oh, they need better editors. Tesla charging stations in North Charleston, according to police. While doing so, the man accidentally lit his clothes on fire, police said. Instant karma. This is what the left has become. This is what the Democratic Party is turning into because they're allowing people like this to take over.
Let me get this straight, Brainiacs. So you're going to go destroy Teslas that have already been paid for? And that's going to what? What exactly are you accomplishing?
Oh, well, it's the same...
Besides just being violent assholes, what are you accomplishing?
Well, it's the same mentality of... I saw this story a few days ago. This is regarding the tariffs. I forget which province in Canada, but one of the Canadian provinces, they were going to stores and they were taking all of the imported American bourbon off the shelves and destroying it in protest of the tariffs. How stupid are you? You've already paid for it. You're just throwing your money down the drain. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, well, I guess that's just a normal MO for liberals.
By the way, they have no bourbon now because the only bourbon comes from Kentucky.
That's right.
So
yeah.
You guys just keep punching yourself in the dick.
They do. They really do. They really do.
That'll really show them. Just show them how mad you are by punching yourself.
Another thing, too, and I posted this on our X account. So, again, follow us at Returning Logos on X, and you can see all this real time. Libs of TikTok posted a clip from MSNBC. Democrat strategist Julie Radzinski says that Trump supporters are too poor to buy the Teslas because Trump bought a Tesla and put it out in front of the White House. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, yeah, I did.
And basically says that Trump supporters are too poor to buy Teslas, and that Trump having the Tesla at the White House was meaningless. So that goes to show what they think of you.
So I just want to say something. And again, this ties into the last episode and the backlash. That statement is false when they're talking about what Trump supporters are.
Exactly.
And saying that they can't afford it.
It's a caricature, like we said in the last episode.
But let me put it this way. I would wager to say 15 to 20% of the people that voted for Trump, they did it while holding their nose. They didn't do it because of Trump's awesome MAGA-ness. They did it because they knew what the alternative was. And the alternative is a bunch of nut jobs that want to destroy your family and that hate America. There are people that can afford Teslas that voted for Trump. Even if they did it while they held their nose, they're not with you guys.
Exactly.
They're not with you guys.
They're not. There's another story that I reposted on our X. It's a clip from MSNBC. Literally, we're saying that the attacks on Teslas are not terrorism, but a legitimate form of protest. Explain to me how destroying someone's property is a legitimate form of protest. It's not a legitimate form of protest. If you have no property rights, you have no freedom. But of course, that's what these people want. They don't care about property rights because they don't care about sovereignty. They don't care about personal autonomy. They don't care about any of that. Just for MSNBC to come out and make the case that vandalism of Teslas is a legitimate form of protest just goes to show you where MSNBC and liberal media has gone.
Yeah, I just don't even care what those people say anymore, to be honest with you. It's like they're probably in support of the Hamas supporters that stormed Trump Tower.
I'm sure they are.
If it's against America, if it's any ideology that thinks America is evil, bad, consistently, they're like, yeah, awesome. I was watching the news the other day and someone said something about that was reported in the Washington Post, and the response was the same Washington Post that said Russia collusion was real for 8 years. You know, you guys have totally destroyed your credibility. You don't get to pretend now like all the lies that you pushed for the past, decades.
Yeah.
You don't get to pretend. I mean, you can. Some people will probably fall for it. And, they always go like, oh, it's red meat for the Republican base or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like the entire corporate media establishment is all red meat. And it's not even for the Democrats' base. It's for the most fringe radical left in the Democrat Party.
And something that you said reminded me of the story of this fellow that's they're talking about deporting, who was Columbia University. The entire left is up in arms that they're considering deporting this guy who's not an American citizen. He's here on a student visa. And what is a visa? Like, a visa is basically us saying, we agree to let you come in our country. If we're allowing that, then we have every right to say, okay, we're not allowing it anymore.
Yeah, you're not entitled to it.
You're not entitled to it.
You're not entitled to a green card.
You're not entitled to it. And what is the insistence of all of these leftists have pretty consistently shown that they hate the United States, but at the same time, they think that everyone in this country who's not a citizen deserves every right and protection that the citizens have. Why is that? If this is such a terrible place, why is that? There's a reason why citizenship in the United States is something precious, and why so many people want it, and why we're lucky to have it. It offers the best protections and the most freedom of any country in the world, and the most benefit. To give those rights and to give those freedom away to anybody that wants it, for me, this just seems like political suicide for Democrats. I can't see how they can justify it.
Well, they're not even following the law.
No.
you know?
And especially like this guy. I mean, he was the leader of a group that's clearly in support of Hamas. And it's like, why do we not have the right to kick out a terrorist sympathizer who's not a citizen?
America is the only country in which everyone that says that they hate it will not leave.
Except for...
And that should
Did you hear the news? Did you hear the news? Rosie O'Donnell.
She's a fat pig.
We finally made America
Only
great.
Rosie. Only Rosie.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
We have finally made America great again. We've gotten rid of Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh, thank heavens. And she went to Ireland, the whitest country in all of the world.
It just feels more comfortable there. You know?
Aye.
With the pasty whiteys.
Well, I hope she has a good St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. I don't know. That lady is psycho. So one other thing that I wanted to talk about, internet infighting among conservatives.
Oh, is this the gossip section?
Yeah. Well, it's not really gossip, but...
I don't know.
Quality.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah. High-end production here, folks.
It's not...
Nothing but the best. You stick with us, okay?
It's not really gossip. It's something that's just living on the internet. It's not really like real world. It involves a lady named Candace Owens. Some of you or all of you may be familiar with her. Candace Owens was a commentator with the company The Daily Wire. The Daily Wire is a conservative media group. They all do podcasts. It is Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan, Jordan Peterson's associated with them. Mm-hmm. So some pretty big names in the conservative movement. Candace came to prominence. It was maybe around like 2013, 2014. It was kind of when that whole red pill thing started taking off.
Right.
She started a YouTube channel called Red Pill Black because she's a black woman. So she was the first publicly proclaimed black woman conservative.
And she had some success.
And so the Daily Wire
signed her.
Yep. And she worked for them. And then after a few years, and I would even say after some failed attempts, because I saw a couple, she tried a few different things with them. She had like a talk show type format, like a morning talk show type format. She had a podcast. She did some documentaries.
She did a pretty good documentary on George Floyd.
She did do a good documentary on George Floyd. For whatever reason, at some point, Candace and the Daily Wire parted ways. Of course, everyone has an NDA. Nobody's talking about what actually happened. And then after Candace separated from the Daily Wire, there was an online spat between her and Ben Shapiro. Mm-hmm. Don't quote me on this, but I believe they were discussing the state of Israel. And again, I understand that Ben is heavily biased towards being pro-Israel.
Absolutely. Ben is an Orthodox Jew.
He is an Orthodox Jew. And Candace, I know that she had questioned some of the military action and a lot of the money that we send over to Israel. And then almost as like a way to just put an end to the conversation, Candace simply responded to Ben's previous thread of comments with Christ is King. So that's the backstory for this. I have some specific feelings about this person, and we'll get into that. Andy has some specific feelings too, and we'll get into that. But let me explain what's going on first. So there's been a trend on X, and one of the trending tags on X during Lent was Christ is King. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
So there's no doubt that the hashtag Christ is King has been used in some trollery, and it also has been used by some anti-Semitic people. There's a whole kind of controversy about that. When Candace Owens parted ways with the Daily Wire, this was at the very beginning of when this phrase even started to be put into use. she posted Christ is King. I don't know how I took it, to be honest. I don't know if Candace was trolling. I don't know if Candace has some anti-Semitic vibes to her. So that kind of kicked the whole thing off. There's this whole thing happening now where trolls are using Christ as King and anti-Semites are using Christ as King, but also real Christians are saying Christ is King. And so they're trying to create this rift. So Andrew Klavan, I think he's probably my favorite guy on the Daily Wire. If you like pretty insightful guys, he is one. Andrew Klavan had commented on something Candace Owens had said on X. Andrew Klavan says, "The problem with arguing with anti-Semites is that they are genuinely as stupid as bricks. They say Christ is King and America first, then make excuses for Iran's government of radical Islamists dedicated to U.S. destruction. They think Gentiles have tormented and persecuted Jews in one nation after another, so there must be something wrong with the Jews. Really, Sherlock? They're not even smart enough to be feckless clowns. Jews are less than 3% of our population and have made amazing contributions in science, industry, finance, and entertainment, and that's not even mentioning the bagels. Oh, the bagels." That's very Klavan-y. "And while Jews have their evildoers just like everyone else, the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Nagasaki and Bolsheviks and Leo Frank are truly the work of semi-literate morons. I know they like to flood social media with ugly garbage. It's all they've got. But paying attention to them lowers your IQ more than fluoride and doesn't even help your teeth. Best to leave them to play with themselves." So I interpret this as Andrew Klavan calling out Candace Owens as an anti-Semite. I've heard her say some things that make me believe she's sympathetic to, I wouldn't say radical Islamists, but she's definitely has no problem with the Tate brothers, Andrew Tate. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Andrew Tate. We won't go into all of that, but he is not a good person. And Andy, I'm interested to what you think of that. To me, this reads as Andrew kind of saying, hey, Candace, slow your roll. You're getting into some anti-Semitic territory and you're maybe too stupid to realize that you're an anti-Semite.
Well, this is hard to say. Let me just put it this way. I've been hearing Christ is King since I was a little kid.
Well, sure. In religious context, yeah.
I don't know if this is something that has been adopted. I guess the implication is if you say Christ is King, you're arguing with the Jews, which I can argue with a Jew. I can argue with them and I can say, no, the reason why you guys don't believe Christ is King is because you're the ones that killed him. And how long are you going to wait for your Messiah before you start thinking, oh, maybe we killed him?
Yeah.
Okay. I can have that argument with a Jew, and it doesn't mean that I'm a Jew hater. I love Ben Shapiro, and I don't disagree with him on any of his attacks on anti-Semites and anti-Semitic. And I support Israel 100%, but you should be able to have that conversation. He doesn't have a monopoly on truth there.
This may also be Andrew Klavan not reading the internet properly, as in not reading the room properly, not understanding. But there are, without a doubt, trolls and anti-Semites who are using the phrase intentionally as a troll and as a way.
But why is it a troll?
Because it's basically used.
Because they don't think Christ is King.
Right.
Okay.
And I think.
So they take that as an attack. There are a lot of people that take that as a way of life.
Sure.
And their truth. Mm-hmm. Okay. He was the king of the Jews until they killed him.
Yeah.
And who kept the Jewish faith going after Christ was killed? Who persecuted the Christians? All the scribes and the Pharisees? Bunch of bureaucrats? They said, no. The only way to God is if you come talk to us. So,
well, it's interesting.
And I've got nothing against Jewish faith.
I don't either.
I have more in common with them than Muslims for sure.
Yeah.
But I just think there's room for all this stuff. And I think this is just internet bullshit.
I think it is kind of internet bullshit. But it's interesting that you mentioned Pharisees. Jordan Peterson actually weighed in on this too. The one thing that I would say, is that, look, I don't know Candace Owens. I don't know Jordan Peterson. I don't know Andrew. I don't know any of these people. However, these people do know each other, and they worked in close proximity to each other. So they have a better understanding probably of each other's personality and their stances and their viewpoints than we do.
Yeah.
So,
well, they clearly have an issue with Candace Owens.
They clearly have an issue with Candace Owens, and I do too, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah.
But I want to read this thread that Jordan Peterson put on X. Candace Owens, a true pharisaical pretender. She vociferously proclaims her devotion to Christ for no other reason than to elevate her perceived status. Her outrage is designed not to shout out the truth from the rooftops, build bridges, or make peace, but to subvert Christianity itself with its new force to her own purposes. She is literally using God's name in vain. There are few more unforgivable sins. He goes on, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs, which appear beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and every kind of filth. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in the people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. All this for the Machiavellians who dare to use what is good for their own vile purposes. Finally, if she wasn't the worst of hypocrites, she would forswear the Tate brothers. But they draw attention. And for a pretender, all attention is good attention, even at the cost, say, of the pearl of great price.
Okay, so he has personal knowledge of her. I'm assuming he had a personal relationship.
He at least
with her
had some interactions.
Point in time. Okay,
right.
But I don't know how deep that goes. So he's deriving that from her take on the Tates.
Maybe.
And I personally am very hesitant to throw stones when it comes to what other people believe and whether or not it is legitimate. Whether or not they have a relationship with God. I don't think that's for Jordan Peterson or Clavin or any of them to say.
I would agree with that. That is not their place to question her.
I just don't think that's appropriate.
It's not their place to question her relationship with God. That's between her and God. I agree with that.
It seems like they're taking something personal and then they're superimposing that on her religious beliefs.
Sure.
I don't know. This all seems like online bullshit.
It's online bullshit. And the reason I wanted to say this because after hearing Candace Owens and seeing her just a handful of times, for years I've been saying she's a fraud. I've always thought she was a fraud. I always thought she saw her meal ticket. I mean, her YouTube channel, Red Pill Black, in that she was a black woman that could come out saying that I've been red pilled, I'm conservative now. Hearing interviews with her, hearing her speak, watching her, I've always had a pretty dang good first impression response meter. I've always been able to peg people pretty well. And I've always got the impression from her, and then hearing things that she said and watching her, she seems fake to me. Leave her relationship with God out of it, right? Hearing Jordan Peterson, him calling her a fraud, that kind of rang true to me. So he's seen something that I've seen, and he's obviously met her personally. So this is kind of why I want to talk about it, just because I want to be a Monday morning quarterback and say, I was always right about Candace Owens, but I don't know.
I don't know about Candace's authenticity, but she was always outclassed.
For sure.
She was always in over her head with the company.
She was the dumbest one in the room.
Always the dumbest one in the room at the Daily Wire.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Okay. But she was also an infant to conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
When people are just finding their way in a new political philosophy, maybe some of the inauthentic vibe that you were getting from her was just that she was a baby.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't even that. I don't want to use a term like aura.
Just a vibe.
But there's just something about her that always rubbed me wrong.
I have no opinion on that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think Candace said something that pissed off Ben Shapiro, and that was it. She's fired. And I don't know anything about Christ is King being a troll. Yeah.
Anyway, that's why I kind of wanted to talk about it, because I just want to say that I was always right. I never thought she was sincere.
All right.
So with that, wrap the news segment. This has been Not So Current Affairs with Isaiah Hickman.
And the Rumor Mill with Andy Taylor. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed the new segment. We're just playing around with the format a little bit. And, we've said before that politics is not the most important thing in life. And although we drill down on politics, we want to show a little bit of depth and a little bit of versatility in this episode.
Andy and I had a discussion about some topics that we'd like to talk about. One of the topics that Andy brought up really struck a chord with me. That topic being the hardest battles are in your own mind. This is just us going to kind of wax philosophic on overcoming your own mind, your own inner demons, the convergence of spiritual and mental health.
We're going to talk a little bit about mental health, but not from a medical perspective. There's a lot of people that are lost. And I'll say I've been one of them, and I probably still am. A wise man knows that he knows nothing. So none of this is to say that we've got it all figured out. But we've lived a little bit, and so we wanted to try to share some of our perspective on how do you find peace? What is peace? Is it achievable? What is that the intersection of? There's a spirituality aspect to it. There is a mental aspect and fortitude, a strength of heart, and then there's interpersonal relationships, your support system. So yeah, we're going to try to get into that a little bit. And it's relevant because, over my lifetime, I've seen the amount of people that rely on pharmaceuticals to adjust their mood, to adjust their happiness, to relieve their anxiety and depression. It's just been continually growing throughout my whole life. I don't want to come at this from a medical perspective, but I do have some statistics that I think are relevant. We want to try to talk about what's really going on here. And you have to ask yourself if drugs are the answer for you. I mean, does everybody that feels sad have a chemical imbalance? Or is there something bigger in life? Is there something more important that we're not addressing? In 2024, a pretty significant percentage of American adults are taking medications for mental health. A poll said that 43% of U.S. adults are currently taking medication for their mental health. In 2023, around 25.6% of women and 14.6% of men received mental health treatment. That's like 1 in 4 women. And they state that women are more likely than men to take psychological medications, with approximately 21% of women and 11% of men reporting taking their medication for mental health. So that's all 18 and older. And then there's adolescents. So the stats are all over the place. Understandably so, because it's not something that the pharmaceutical companies really want you talking about. And most of these stats come from...
I think a lot of it's self-reported, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, so the stats are weird. When you look this stuff up, this many people reported this. So this is not from the insurance companies. Most of the polls come from NIH and government agencies that we know that the people that are regulating the pharmaceutical companies are in bed with them, sometimes getting paid by them. So take it with a grain of salt.
I think it's still fair to say, though, because I remember when people going to see a therapist or people taking an antidepressant or something like that, it was kind of not shameful, but it wasn't something that people would just feel okay to broadcast. They try to kind of keep it to themselves.
Yes.
And now you see this whole culture that's risen up of people being proud that they're on one of these medications.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that there aren't people that need it. I know plenty of people personally. It helps them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So need it and helps them are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
But 20% of adolescents are receiving mental health treatment. And don't even get me started on the pandemic. The rate of antidepressants
skyrocketed.
Yeah. That they were dispensing to young people increased 46% more quickly during the coronavirus pandemic, according to the Journal of Pediatrics. Anxiety disorders, 32% of teens are estimated to have an anxiety disorder, with, again, females more likely than males. Major depressive episodes, 20% of youth ages 12 to 17 reported suffering from a major depressive episode. And they define that basically if it has a dramatic effect on your day-to-day life. What they would have used to call a mental break in like the 70s and 80s, right? So I'm not trying to suss all this out. All I'm saying is we're drugging up our kids. All the adults are on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's taking meds to try and make themselves feel what? What are they trying to feel? Trying to feel happy? Not sad? There's an underlying issue here.
I think there is, and I think there's a lot of ins and outs to it. I understand because I was one of those people that was temporarily on one of those medications in my past. And, you know, from my experience, I can't say that it was helpful, at least not in a way that was significant to me. So I'm not kind of like speaking out of turn here. I have, you know, some life experience with this.
Gotcha. Okay.
And like I said, I think there's a lot of ins and outs to it. And I think there's a lot of, there's multiple reasons why this is happening. The stat that you cited, how dramatically it increased during the pandemic. I think that that's a really good correlation. It correlates well to what I think one of the issues is. It's actually two issues that kind of tie together. This may sound cliche because I'm sure you've all heard it before. We live in a society that's more connected than it's ever been because of the internet. But at the same time, we're more disconnected from people than ever before because particularly people who have lived their whole life with access to this technology, it's not uncommon to see people live most of their entire lives as an electronic interaction. And so people are mistaking that connection for a real connection, and it's not real. This is, again, you know, our thoughts on the subject. It's not settled science or
and again, there is no judgment here.
Yeah, this is no
I know
judgment.
plenty of people that take medications to try and help them.
Yeah, no judgment. You know, I think that people are retreating away from real society.
Real interactions
for online interaction. I think that ties into the other thing that I think is a big cause is people feeling a lack of purpose. Like I said, I think that stat that you mentioned about how dramatically it increased during the pandemic. Well, what happened during the pandemic? People were locked in their houses. The only type of interaction they had, other than with the people that were in their house with them, was via the internet. And what else? A lot of people couldn't go to work. So lack of interaction and lack of purpose. Because there's a difference between a job and work, right? But work can give you purpose. So to me, those are two of the things that I really think. And for me, the times when I was the most down were always times in my life where I felt like I had the least control of my life and least amount of direction. There were times in my life where I felt just like a buoy out in the middle of the ocean. And it's a scary feeling. And you don't know what to do with it. And so you start to question, you know, reality. You start to question existence. You start to question everything because there's no purpose there.
I think there's definitely a connection there. I think the pandemic kind of proved that. there is a connection, and there is a visceral need for a human connection that everybody shares. The most introverted people, they punish psychopaths, murderers. The most antisocial people that you can imagine, punish them by putting them in solitary confinement. So I think there's a sense of being alone and needing to belong. You know, connecting online is not the same. It's not how we're wired.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that you said earlier got me thinking was, why are people taking these drugs? Is it to feel happy, or is it to not feel sad, or what is it? And I think a lot of people, they think that happiness is a place that they will eventually get to. You know what I mean? They see it as a destination rather than as your journey through life and the way that you live your life and the way that you conduct yourself. And I think it's interesting that in the Declaration of Independence, they use the phrase, the pursuit of happiness. Even back then, they understood that happiness isn't an end. It's something you pursue for your entire life. And that pursuit, having a goal and going after that goal, that's what creates the happiness. You know, they say idle hands are the devil's playground. Well, what better way for the devil to take complete control of you than to make you feel miserable, like there's no reason for you to exist? I think a lot of people have had those thoughts. I've had those thoughts, you know, so.
Purpose is definitely crucial, and there's a spiritual element to that. But before I talk about that, I want to take it back just a second. Let's take all the technology out of the conversation, because this is a human problem. Yeah, we're accelerating it, but this is a human problem. I remember when I graduated high school, we were not near as connected as what the kids are these days. Mm-hmm. You know, I think we had MyFace and Napster.
MySpace?
Oh, yeah,
you said MyFace. We had MyFace.
We had MyFace, yeah. So it wasn't really a thing, you know. Take all that away, and I remember when I got out of high school and even college, talking to girls and guys, and they all thought happiness was a spot on the map. Oh, I hate this town. I hate this place. I hate this. I'm going to go over here. And it's like, I know people that are still chasing that dragon. Mm-hmm.
I was one of those people.
It's not a spot on the map. This is deeper than the acceleration that technology has caused.
Yeah.
This is a mental and spiritual crisis. It is people unable to draw from within. The only reason I have the strength to draw from within is because God lives in me. And that might seem hokey to some people out there. You can call it whatever you want. I'm not a Buddhist monk. I'm not some guru, but I have internal strength that drives me. And where you get that from, that's your journey. I'm just saying where I derive it from. Mm-hmm. And there are so many people, they're looking to external sources to make them happy. So they're looking to a spot on the map, or they're looking for someone else to confirm their identity. And look, we've messed things up. I mean, what's the divorce rate? What's the divorce rate?
Like 54%?
Yeah, it's over 50%, and it's been that way consistently for a long time. So fathers, be good to your daughters and your sons. These are important things, and they're impactful.
Well, and I think that that's an important point, because you've got so many single parent households, you know, so you've got a single person raising a kid, and it's been that way. I mean, really kind of kicked off in the 80s, divorce kind of started skyrocketing, and it's always been an issue that government has kind of subsidized single motherhood, unfortunately. And, you know, this is kind of anecdotal, but, you know, my wife works at a school. You know, she tells me stories every day of some of the crazy stuff that, you know, these kids are just wild. They're out of control. And how much of that can be resolved if the kid has a dad in the house, Or if these crazy kids have two parents in the house. I want to say this carefully because I don't want it to come off as like I'm castigating people. But, how many of those parents are themselves on
a lot of
some
them
type
now.
of drug? And how many of those parents aren't truly engaged? And how many, because they have no self-discipline, they can't discipline their child? I would venture to say it's a pretty high percentage. When I hear some of these stories that my wife tells me, it just blows my mind because it's like, when I was in elementary school, there was absolutely none of that. I didn't want to get too far off on a tangent, but, I think that there's a really big issue with that. And I think that contributes to the mental health because you've got these kids growing up that are out of control. They don't have engaged parents.
And the parents might not have mental fortitude. They might be relying on drugs themselves just to make it by, So, yeah, I would say understand happiness is not an external thing. It is not a spot on the map. It is not someone else. It's not someone else's love. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about partnership between a husband and wife, and that's kind of why I brought up divorce. Mm-hmm. But it starts within you. Where does that come from? And the other thing, too, is if you're rudderless, to use Jordan Peterson, if you don't know what you're aiming at, you're definitely not going to hit it. That's a paraphrase. Mm-hmm. I probably butchered it, but you get the point. If you don't know what you're aiming at, you're not going to hit it. And don't look to other people to tell you what you should be aiming at. That's part of the pursuit of happiness, right? It's part of the journey.
Well, and I know because I was one of those people who are having these problems always say, if we're just using your terminology, not that they would say this verbatim, but I don't know what to aim at. They're missing the point. You don't even have to aim at anything specific. You just have to aim at something. I mean, obviously that something should not be an evil thing. As long as you're aiming at something, as you're going towards that target, another target may appear that is more closely aligned with your interests or your skill set or whatever, because it's not a static thing. It's not a static path. What's the Bruce Lee, you must be like water.
So I find that to be true in the sense of the physical world. What you're saying, I find that to be true. Meaning, I didn't know that when I went to school to be a recording engineer, that I was going to be a different kind of engineer. Mm-hmm. I had to see where life took me. Now, I had an aim, and it was in a direction. So I would say that I find that to be true in a physical sense. But you can be specific in saying, what is good? What do I want in life? And how do I get there? I can't count how many conversations I've had with people. I don't know why, but people seem to come to me throughout my life, often women or girls, when they're in a down place or a dark place and they're looking for encouragement. I don't know how to say this. The physical aim does not have to be precise, but you should know who you are. You should have some sort of roots. You should have some sort of foundation. You should know what is good, and you should pursue that. And if you continue to pursue that, then maybe eventually you can focus your aim on the highest good. And if that's where you are focused, your journey will be wrought with problems, with struggle. Struggle is what makes us stronger. And I don't want to say that taking drugs is the easy way out, but I think a lot of times there are things that just people don't deal with. You have to battle your inner demons, right? So when I say take aim,
maybe your aim is recognizing your monster.
I'm not talking about career path.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is important too. That will come into play. But let's say that you're maybe a non-confrontational person. the biggest confrontation that you need to have is going to be with yourself. And if you're always running, so, okay, in order to figure out what to aim at, what is the ultimate good? What is it that I'm moving towards? What is it that I want? Because if you don't know what you want, you can't expect someone else to give it to you. Even if they were capable, how would they know what it is?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm kind of talking about the male-female relationship in a way. But interpersonal relationships in general, it's true across the boards. It's just more relevant to us in interpersonal male-female relationships, typically, you know. So if you want to take aim, then you have to know what's true. In order to know what's true, you have to be honest. And in order for you to be honest, you have to be honest with the most difficult person it is to be honest with, and that's yourself. If you spend your life avoiding pain, avoiding your demons, avoiding the struggle, it's all just waiting for you. It never goes away. But I think a lot of people are running.
I agree with that, but I would also say that I don't think that you necessarily have to find your inner aim first, or even necessarily understand totally who you are first.
No.
To begin that. In my experience, just getting my physical life in order brought a lot more clarity to my mental life. I would say if any of you out there are listening and you need help with this, I think either path can help you. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, because this was something that I had thought about when we had mentioned doing this topic. A lot of people see their mind and their body as two separate things, and they're not. You are your entire self. Everything that you do, everything that you think, everything that you feel, interact with each other, and it's all one thing. I have an inner monologue. I think most people have an inner monologue. You know, not long ago, I just noticed one day that as my inner monologue runs, I refer to myself in the third person instead of the first person. The more I thought about it, the more odd that I thought it was. Instead of thinking, oh, why did I do that? I would say, oh, why did you do that?
Why are you so stupid?
Yeah. You know, surface level look at it, it may not seem like a big deal. I was thinking about this when we brought up this topic to talk about. That can be really dangerous because you're separating your mind from your action. You know your inner monologue is your mind, but your mind is talking about or to your physical self.
Something else.
As something else.
Like it's something being done to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? So, you know,
why did you do this?
Yeah. I don't know how relevant that is. Honestly, I don't know how that necessarily plays into mental health, but I can say that I don't think that it's beneficial for you to view your physical self as something separate from your mind.
No. The key to all this stuff is balance. You have to balance your body, mind, and spirit. None of this is easy. It doesn't help that everybody's getting divorced and nobody has role models and no one's talking to them about this stuff, and everybody's all in their own head. There's a limit to how self-conscious you should be. If you are the most self-conscious that you could possibly be, you are going to be depressed. Because we are flawed. We're all flawed. And here's the thing. You can try to hide from yourself, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you'll know. Of course you're going to be anxious. Of course you're going to be depressed. So there has to be a balance to everything. If you're just stewing and focused, completely self-conscious, right? There's no difference between that and suffering. There's really not. So you have to balance that stuff. You want to be self-conscious in the sense that you know what your
limits,
and what your tendencies are. And the tendencies that are good, encourage those. The tendencies that are bad, try to discourage those. So you want to have some level of self-consciousness. You want to have some depth. If you just float through life and you never think about anything and you're always looking for a distraction, that's not going to do good. But sometimes what you need is to get off your ass and go do something with your hands, or put your feet in the grass, or something to ground you.
Go do hard things.
Right. So there's a balance between all this, right? None of this is easy.
No, it's not. And again, like I can speak, just from my personal experience, I tend towards lazy. I don't know what that is in me. I don't know. I understand, like, finding the motivation to get up and do something is really hard. Me, of all people, understands that. But it's like you said, recognizing the good things and the bad things about yourself. Encourage the good and find ways to subdue the bad. Not ignore the bad, but subdue it. And for me, what really helped was learning how to identify negative mental cycles. I don't live in anyone else's head, obviously, so I don't know how other people experience life. But the way I experience life is a cycle. I've even identified it. It has a time period, and it has key indicators of every cycle that I'm at, every point in the cycle that I'm at. And once you can recognize that, then a light can click in your head, and you're like, oh, this is where I'm at. And once you can identify where you're at, then you can take the steps
to adapt.
Yeah. It's like you walk into a dark room that you've never been in before, you're going to run into stuff.
Yeah.
And that's your mind if you haven't sat through and at least taken a look at yourself. Turn the light on, pay attention so you don't stub your toe on the coffee table.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not trying to make this to be something simple or easy. If it was simple or easy, I don't think anybody would be coming to me asking for advice. And I don't know why anybody thinks that my advice would be worth anything, but it has been consistent. And most of the time when that's happened in my life, it's someone that knows I'm an honest broker. They know that I'm not going to tell them what they want to hear. I'm going to tell them what they need to hear. If I was going to try to explain it, and I can even tie it in with what we were talking about with COVID. So if all your sources of reinforcement, what am I? Who am I? What is good? What is good in life? What do I want? What am I? And don't even get me started on what young girls are having to compare themselves with online. It's no wonder that they're far more likely to be taking psychological medications.
Well, that, and I mean, girls are just like, they're absolutely brutal to each other too when they're younger.
Yeah.
Well, I think women are too, to a lesser degree, but.
Yeah. So all of that stuff is to say, you have to find an internal source for happiness. I have spent my entire life being disappointed by nearly everyone. I hold myself to a fairly high standard of, I guess you would say, friendship and dedication and loyalty. And it took me a long time to figure out that just because that's how I see the world and just because that's how I am, doesn't mean that anybody else has to be that way. I spent a good portion of my life just being disappointed with people in general, just feeling betrayed constantly, lack of loyalty. It took me a while to figure it out. You can only control what you can control. And if you're looking to external sources to provide you with validation, you're likely going to be disappointed. You're likely going to be let down. So how do you find that inner strength? Where do you derive that from? How do you do that in this chaotic world, right?
Well, I think for everybody it's different, but a good place to start, if you're inclined to do so, is God for sure. But the overall thing that I would say is that it has to be some type of virtue. You know, a virtue is something that is aiming for the greatest good. Again, you're going to have troubles along the way. That's part of life. Going back to the analogy before, as long as you're aiming for something that is good, you're on the right path.
Yeah, it'll guide all of your other choices as well.
Yeah.
You know, people say, all I want is just to be happy. Oh, that's it?
That's it?
Just eternal bliss? Just to be happy all the time? That's all? Yeah. The world doesn't owe you that.
No.
In fact, the world owes you struggle. And that's what it's going to give you. And that's a tough lesson for...
How egocentric is that? All I want is happiness.
Yeah.
Like nobody else does?
I don't care about money. I just want to be happy.
You think,
oh, that's it?
That's it?
Just that.
And you think you're the only one
Yeah.
that struggles with that? Like, come on. There's 7 billion of us here, and we're all similar in that way.
It's a balance between all this stuff. You recognize that you have a soul. Recognize that you live in a spiritual world. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. But recognize there is a spiritual realm here.
There's something there.
As Yoda would say, we are more than just this crude matter, you know. Mm-hmm. There's a spark. There's something else. So recognize that. Don't disregard it. Look within to find validation and balance that with work, with purpose, with direction.
And again, work isn't necessarily your job.
Yeah, that's not what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, that's not what I mean. Sometimes it's like working on yourself.
Sometimes it's cleaning the house.
Yeah. It could be that simple, you know. Yeah. It's also recognizing that normally your environment is a manifestation of whatever is going on in your head. So if your house is chaos, it's probably a pretty good indication that mentally there's a lot of chaos, right? Mm-hmm. Be conscious of yourself, but think more about who you want to be than what you are. Because if you're over self-conscious, you can get dragged into a pretty dark hole because we're all flawed, right? So you balance that, you drive that purpose, and you don't look to someone else to give it to you. Don't look for someone else to fix your problems. And don't look for someone else to fight your demons. You have to confront them. You have to meet them head on. If it's painful, when you get through on the other side, that pain will be transformed into strength. Struggle is what makes us stronger.
The other thing, too, is to understand that pain is never permanent. Whatever pain it is that you're going through, eventually you'll be on the other side of it. And I understand how you can get into a place where it feels like a bottomless pit. I understand that feeling. And eventually there's a way back up. Also understand that you have a lot of thoughts that go through your head. And those thoughts can be benign to, downright horrible. Kind of a funny place maybe to, you wouldn't think you would hear an interesting or thought-provoking quote from Mel Gibson. I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast. He had Mel Gibson on, and he had a quote that really stuck with me. This may not be verbatim, but it's pretty close. He said, "I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I am responsible for my second thought and my first action." Random things can pop into your head. It may not even just pop into your head. You may be in a cycle of negative thought. Even if you feel like you have no control over those thoughts, you can be responsible for the next thought. And then you take responsibility for the first action as a result of that thought.
And that's about accountability. If you're always running, you're not being accountable for who and what you are. And recognize that who and what you are doesn't mean you can't become who and what you want to be. The past is the past, and we learn from everything as we build our lives.
And the present is just the next past moment.
Yeah. So it's never too late. I want to say this too. Men and women are different. So when I say never look to external sources to bring you purpose, happiness, or direction, I say that because if you're looking to external sources, then it can be taken from you. If it's internal, no one can take it from you. But I say that with a caveat. For girls, you have a propensity to experience more negative emotion. And there's a reason for that. It's because you're more vulnerable in multiple ways. That's thousands of years of history. So you have a built-in threat detector because you're in charge of infants and you're physically vulnerable. And I don't mean this in a chauvinistic way, but historically, you're physically vulnerable without a man to protect you. You have this built-in threat detector. Just recognize that you're going to get some false positives. And that's why I say there's a caveat. Because I think man and woman together complete the whole. That's why I brought up divorce earlier. That's how we're built. That's how we're designed. That's how we're wired. So the caveat is I would give women more leeway on looking to an external source if it is their partner, their life partner. And because of that, I would say the man that you choose to be your life partner is one of the most important decisions that you'll ever make.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because if he is weak, if he can't be the rock for the family, it's going to put a lot of pressure on you. And you know what? There's a lot of women that do it. They do it all the time, but it's not in our nature.
But what's the cost?
Yeah.
Right? What's the cost?
It's at a tremendous cost.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being a single mother. That's tough. Those are some tough girls, man.
Yeah, they are.
But you don't want that.
Right.
You don't want that. And the only way you can get to that point to where you can look at a man and you can know that is if you have aim, if you have all of that stuff inside of you, if you've worked on your balance, trying to find that equilibrium to where you can go into the world and you can say, here I am, and I'm not ashamed, and I'm not overly proud. You know,
that's a big one.
Right.
That's a big one.
I'm not overly proud, but I'm not ashamed. And no one's going to tell me who I am and what I'm going to be. That comes from inside me. You know, and if I want to have a talk about that, I'll talk with God about that. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that's the way to be. If you do that, then you'll know that man when you're looking at him. Mm-hmm. You know? If you're a man, you definitely need to have internal strength and fortitude because it is your job to be the rock for your family, the shelter when the wind blows. That's your job. And there's a lot of men out there that aren't doing their job for whatever struggles they've had. I feel bad for their family more than I feel bad for them. And for all the boys out there, you don't have any options. You got to get tough. You got to draw from within inside yourself. If you do that,
you're unstoppable.
Yeah.
So I would say don't take this as that it's not good to have a role model. You should have a role model. Hopefully that role model is your father. But if not, you need someone to show you what a real man is and what a real man does.
And guys, sorry, it's not fun. But you know what? when you reach the goal, when you reach the end, all the sacrificing, it's what gives you meaning. It's what gives you purpose. It's what this is all about. That is the pursuit of happiness.
Be the man who plants the tree whose shade he knows he will never sit under.
Yep. Life is about sacrifice. Sacrifice brings you closer to purpose. Life is not about, I just want to be happy and let me just do whatever feels good right now. Whatever feels good right now is not going to feel good 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
That's the fastest road to hell. If you're not religious, you don't believe in hell, that's fine. But hell is real because hell can be a place in your own mind. Hell can be a physical place where you're at. Please understand that. Indulgence is the fastest way to hell. Have a purpose. Be willing to sacrifice for it. Do hard things.
If someone just gives you something, as opposed to you build something, there's no way you could possibly have the same value, the same recognition of actual value. That's what gives you purpose. And the hardest battles you'll ever fight are going to be in your own mind. No one else is going to do it for you. If you need them, okay. No pharmaceutical will save you from this beautiful and miserable thing that's called life.
Beautiful disaster. Well, everybody, thanks for hanging with us through that one. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We want to do these occasionally. I mean, we're no philosophers. We're no theologians. We're just a couple of guys who have lived life a little bit. I know each of us has some unique experiences, and I hope we can pass on to you what we've learned from those experiences. We hope you found some nuggets in there.
I just want to provide encouragement.
Yeah.
It's never too late. Who you are is not who you're going to be.
It's always in flux.
Yeah.
It can always be changed.
It's never too late. You can always make it right.
You can always make it right. So, again, thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for following, subscribing, all the support that you guys have been giving us. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.